Last month, on the sunny south coast of Bournemouth, the fairy tale ending happened to a story that was never meant to be told. The nice guy wasn't supposed to win. The good guy isn't meant to have it all. Boxing, like most things these days, has ended up all about the labels. If you're not an elite amateur coming into the Olympics with a shiny medal of various colours, nobody wants to know. If you don't shift 1,000 tickets based purely off a polarising personality, then frankly, who needs you? Well, on Saturday, May 27th at the Vitality Stadium, home of his beloved Cherries, one Chris Smith achieved it all, and what's more, gave hope to the many excellent fighters who didn't achieve their potential as an amateur. Today, we go through the story of the man known as the Gentleman. Hello and welcome to the Boxing, Weights and Rugby YouTube channel. Let's talk boxing! We start where every good story should, the beginning, and for CBS this was in the confines of Pool ABC. Bournemouth is a wonderful part of the world, but generally sunshine and beautiful beaches does not lead to the sort of brutal upbringing that creates most men who choose to be punched in the face for a profession. Chris was a good amateur, totaling 43 fights, reaching 32 wins to 11 losses. For however much, amateur records are actually worth it given the variability in quality of judging. He reached 2 ABA finals, losing out to possible future opponents and quality fighters in their own rights, Jack Massey and 2021 Olympian Chevron Clark. Crucially, however, the big man appeared to lack that punching power that all big guys need, registering just one KO in his amateur career. After missing out on the GB podium squad, Smith started playing the role of lovesick teenager to Shane McGuigan's striking female lead. The story of the New Year's Day sparring session with George Groves is a well-trodden path. But Chris's commitment, tenacity, and a variety of other overused adjectives that wouldn't appear out of place in any self-help book convinced the young Shane to take up hunt on a project in place of shinier individuals that came through his gym. It was around this time that I first became aware of a pro boxer from Bournemouth where I lived at the time, fighting under Shane McGuigan, the trainer of my favourite fighter at the time, Josh Taylor, and managed by his famous father, Barry McGuigan. Deep on a Cyclone Promotions undercard, I watched the fresh-faced CBS stop an opponent in 2 rounds and thought, this could be fun. The next big step for CBS's career was to build that fan base back home, and he wisely was a regular on the exceptional Bendel's boxing shows. In 2018, Chris fought a total of 4 times, 3 of which was in his backyard of the O2 Theatre in Boscombe, Bournemouth, as well as a brilliant night at the York Hall where he shared the bill with a few notable names, including undisputed super lightweight champion Chantel Cameron, former European bantamweight champion Lee McGregor, and top heavyweight contenders Martin Bacoli and Michael Hunter. After watching CBS stop Robin Dupree in 5 solid rounds, I wonder what odds you would have got for the big man from Bournemouth to be the first male on the bill to fight for a world title. This year both elevated CBS on the domestic cruiserweight scene, as well as establishing a vociferous fan base in a non-traditional boxing hub. The next step is a big breakout fight, and on a Dillian White pay-per-view undercard in July 2019, Chris Smith stepped up to fight Richard Riakporhe for a WBA bauble, but the winner would be officially coronated as the next big thing at £200. In an enthralling but messy affair, Chris boxed well at times, but also the giant Riakporhe was able to put his much vaunted punching power to good effect, and with a contentious knockdown awarded in the 7th, the Midnight Train was awarded a split decision victory. Disappointed but not disheartened, CBS and his team knew stock had risen in defeat and opportunities would now present themselves going forward. And sure enough, before the year was out, Chris was given the chance to win his first major title, the Commonwealth Belt, on away ground once again against fellow domestic contender Craig Glover. There is a motto down in the Leighton Sports Centre where McGuigan's gym resides: consistency builds success. And the Glover fight is where the fruits of that consistent labour begins to bloom, as Chris' superior physicality, dramatically increased punching power and tighter punching technique earns the big man from Bournemouth a KO in the 5th round. After this, the world took a small hiatus for a minor worldwide pandemic, and bizarrely, CBS's return to the ring came in Eddie Hearn's back garden in the legendary Fight Camp series. Chris played his part in the rebirth of boxing with one of the best KOs of the Fight Camp series. A tough 10 rounds against the vastly underrated Vasil Dukar later, and CBS made his back-garden return in a deeply contentious matchup against Ireland's Tommy McCarthy. With both camps at odds, it was weird to see that the two fighters themselves seemed to be fairly harmonious, but when it came down to it, nobody held back anything. Chris survived the right hand from the gods to outwork and outpunch the towering McCarthy, and despite the scorecards being narrower than they should have been, CBS captures the British, Commonwealth and European titles. And already many claimed this itself was an overachievement. They had no idea of what was to come. A 12-round maiden title defence against Dillian Breguion set up the rematch, where Chris showed he was far from at his ceiling and dominated from start, ending the rivalry with a spectacular KO in the 8th round. This set up his return to Bournemouth as a headline act, something he and his fans have been screaming for years. Once again, with yours truly in attendance, CBS packed out the BIC and gave British fight fans one of the best atmospheres in many years. Aided by a superb dance partner in Isaac Chamberlain, the pair combined to give us a domestic fight of the year and an instant cult classic fight. A deserved win in the end set things up to perfectly make Bournemouth his full-time fortress. Not content with just winning Fight of the Year, CBS had to be greedy and add KO of the Year to his growing list of accolades. The unwilling victim was Armen Jojan, who had given Chris a proper fight before a picture-perfect uppercut punctuated a superb combination and another thrilling night on the south coast. And so the big moment had arrived, and not in the way we thought it would. The venue was perfect, AFC Bournemouth's own Vitality Stadium, or simply Dean's Court to the OGs. A reigning world champion stood across the ring from him with 15,000 baying fans behind him, but as CBS looked across the ring, he will have seen more than just an enemy to conquer. He also saw a friend, and former stablemate in the form of WBO champion and 2016 Olympian Lawrence Okoli, who had only recently left the gym. Despite having done over 300 rounds together in sparring and both men being on good terms, it was agreed that the only way to truly honour such a friendship was to give it all in the ring to win, and anything less would be deemed disrespectful. The Friday before the weigh-in was Chris's firstborn son's first birthday, big up Frank, and as an early birthday present to his father, the little man had given CBS a fight week flu with no returns receipt. However, he rallied round come fight night, and so the stage was set. Let's take a moment to appreciate one of the all-time great ring walks.
This is what it's all been about. His whole career, his whole boxing life, building to this moment.
The game plan was set, and despite Okoli nicking the first 3 rounds, Billum Smith knew his moment would come, and when it did, boy did he take it. Okoli throws a lazy lead left hook and falls off balance to his right. CBS brings up and round a glorious left hook, and suddenly the champion is on the seat of his pants for the first time in his career. In what descended into an enthralling but ultimately very messy affair, Okoli was fairly docked 2 points for holding. Unfairly ruled to have been put down a second time, but fairly ruled to have been put down a third. The myriad of points deduction made scoring a nightmare, but the result was never in doubt. At the end of the 12th round, both men stood exhausted, but there's only one sound we needed to hear. With that, bedlam ensued and tears were shed. Ever the class act, Chris dedicated his win to his ill mother. big up Mama CBS, and Okoli, who was a genuine gentleman himself in defeat. But this was more than just a normal victory. This was the culmination and vindication of years of hard work from not just Chris himself, but the much maligned McGuigan team. Despite all he had achieved in the sport, Shane says this was the sweetest moment of his career, and taking a bright-eyed, enthusiastic sparring partner for Groves and Hay to the very top of the mountain against the best cruiserweight in the world at the time. Despite years of being told to leave and watching many elite fighters depart, this was a reward and a win for loyalty and hard work, and made him, in my view, the number one cruiserweight
in the world.
It's also a win that gives hope to those who suffer a loss early on in their career. Sadly, in today's post-Mayweather era, a defeat is often unthinkable to up-and-coming prospects as they fear being discarded like yesterday's rubbish. Another man fighting on May 27th is a perfect example, Lethal Lee Wood. Wood lost to Gavin McDonnell for the British Super Bantamweight title early on in his pro career before rebuilding and then suffering another defeat to Jazza Dickens in the Golden Contract tournament. However, on Saturday night, Lee Wood became a two-time featherweight champion of the world. Another great story for another time. Since we're in Manchester, let's talk about a famous native, Anthony $1 Million Crawler, who suffered a devastating KO defeat to Derry Matthews for the British lightweight title, as well as losing out in the semi-finals of prizefighter to Gary Sykes, before he went on to spectacularly stop Darlis Perez for the WBA lightweight title in his own backyard, striking parallels with our own beloved CBS. My favourite example of this nature is Scotland's finest Ricky Burns, a British boxing legend who went from losing 2 British super featherweight title challenges against Alex Arthur and Carl Johansson to winning world titles in 3 separate weight classes, multiple world title defences, and fighting some of the greatest fighters of his generation. But back to CBS. An overused word across all sports is talent. Non-specific and hard to define, we generally attribute talent as the physical gifts we are born with, and conjure images of frightening fast hands and silky smooth skills. But this definition is far too narrow for my taste. The old saying is hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard, but the ability to work hard, the ability to be consistent, and the resilience to continue to strive when all around you say it's not worth it, that in itself is also a talent. Chris has taken the idea that his ceiling in boxing was predetermined by what he was born with, or what he achieved a decade ago, and made it look laughable. He's also made laughable the idea that one has to be a howling monster to be a success in boxing. One of the nicest men you could ever wish to meet, he is also one hard bastard, and frankly, nothing more or less than exactly what a real gentleman should be. Thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and let us know in the comment section which sport you're here for. Drop a B for boxing, a W for weightlifting, and an R for rugby. Thank you, and have a great evening.